We had lots of panels today, lots of good conversation, sensible, important conversation, but you can see I'm doing something a little bit different. And again, I think that the theme of this conference is we want to write, or so you think you can write. I think really the better question is, what are you reading? What's on your shelf? To know, you're absolutely right. You have to read the journals to know what's in them, to send the right thing to them, to be part of the conversation. The conversation is huge. I'll tell you one other complicating factor in terms of things that I can tell you about sort of my journey in terms of how I came to write particular poems that I read. When I was young, and when the part of you remember, like 4th grade, 5th grade, around in there, it was, probably by then, my mother got hearing aids. But up until that point, I don't think she heard me very well. And certainly when I was a newborn, she had been losing her hearing, and I'm sure did not hear me. And unless someone said, your baby is crying, she wouldn't necessarily know. She had to see me. So Wordsworth says, beware the tyranny of the eye. We're so interested in what we see and showing, and even workshops all say, show, don't tell. And I realized, I believe that. I believe that absolutely, but I needed to tell too. I needed to be heard. And I think one reason we write is we want to hear one another. That's really crucial. We write and we put it out there, because there's lots of things that go to my bottom drawer that guarantee, Christian, I don't want you to read it. That's just a private thing. There's more of them than the public ones, for sure. But we want to be heard. We realize that it's a work of art because it kind of rises outside us and moves beyond us. It comes up and enters that larger public conversation. So I write, and so it was really important to be clear, to be concise. If I was only to have a few words to get to the person that I cared about most, and it's both Freud, Jung, and God know that's your mother. You want to be clear. You want to make sure they can hear you. Well, I made a big mistake around puberty. I made thousands of mistakes around puberty, but I made one that I'm going to tell you about, which is I asked my mother one day, can I listen to your hearing aid? And this is back before these fancy ones they have now. And it was like a transistor radio. It was like these iPod things that come down in this sort of box that she had down here. She said, well, of course you can. So I took it and I got it all on, and she crossed the room and she said, hello, Richard. And it was like picking up a radio station like 10 big cities away. Just a staticky, tin, metallic voice. It's one of the most terrifying moments in my life. I thought, that's how my mother hears me. And remember, I was going to later struggle with the solid system and all of that, try to burst out and communicate. It was just a benchmark moment, and I know that everyone in this room that wants to write has those moments that said, okay, this has something to do about how I'm going to write, how I'm going to put myself in the hands of other people. So for me, it was very important to be clear, to be concise, and that's difficult because my poems don't come out clear and concise. They come out very discombobulated, in grand disarray, very confused, very abstract quite often. I love Allen Ginsberg, who said, first thought, best thought. That has never been the case for me. It's usually my 10,000th thought, maybe, after many revisions. So anyway, I'll read you another very early poem called The Hearing Aid. My mother, half deaf, a small metal box pinned to her blouse, and beneath the gray locks, the hidden earphone, the wire running across her heart to its home in her ear can barely hear me anymore. I'm just someone's voice, lost years ago, trying now to make myself clear, deliberately now, so she will see how hard the words come. Bent to her breast, I speak to the heart, almost hopeless, for hardly anyone has ever heard. So we were talking today about the the state of the world and the state of poetry. And we're talking specifically about our time and our culture in the United States. But I think really poets and poetry really are about getting to the heart. We already know we're smart people. We know all that. We'll grant ourselves that. But to get to the heart of things, to make that connection down here where the archaic torso of Apollo is. That's the Buddha's wisdom is here. It's in the center of our being. You know, sometimes in universities and we're all loft it up. We make it up here. It's not up here. It just isn't. And when I read poems that matter to me, you know, I might use my head and go, wow, that's really well made. I see how they did this, I see how they did that, I see all these things that they're doing. Boy, it doesn't, I'm going to say, it's not layers now. So, bend to the heart, bend to her breast. I speak to the heart, almost hopeless, for hardly anyone has ever heard. But the task is to write those poems and make yourself heard. That's the task. Quite simply, is to be heard. Well, how do you do that? Well, then the poet has to go back, and then we're back to revision again, and the hard work of that. And frankly, revision is my favorite thing. I love revision. I just love doing it. When I write a poem, and for years I wrote just the saddest poems imaginable. I would write a really unbearably sad poem. I just go, yes, yes. I was so happy. It's a great sad poem. It'll tear your heart out. I love doing that. But then you go back and you look at it a week later and go, it's not sad enough. Revise it more. So I was very lucky. I was asked to talk a little bit about my history, and I thought that what I would do, I never dreamed that I would be an English professor or anything like that, and I'm very, very lucky. I've walked completely backwards into that life. I was working in CBS. I'd been accepted at Columbia University when I was a kid, and to the MFA program, and then but I thought, oh, that's really expensive, and I have no money. And although I didn't have your wisdom, I should have parlayed it somehow. So I went to work instead for CBS Books, and I started editing, and I thought, well, maybe I'll work for a while. And I was also trying to write book reviews, and I thought that I would be a book reviewer for my livelihood. And I couldn't do that because I would struggle over them like they were, poems written in stone, and I just would have starved.